talk about something that happened on the radio in this era, which I found a little interesting. Flair is doing a radio appearance for a radio station in Albany, New York, and he's allowing callers to call in and ask wrestling questions. And Meltzer would say that Flair came off really well, and the DJs plugging the show kept saying that Flair was the real world champion and how he'd beat Hogan like it was nothing, but Flair doesn't want to sort of mess up any opportunity to maybe work in New York, so he never comments on that. However, when one caller asked about a unification match, the DJ and Ric Flair assume the caller is talking about Hogan Flair, and Flair says he would love to have that match. But then the caller says, no, I meant with you and Jerry Lawler. And Flair is incredulous at this. He said that essentially he's upset anyone would even consider Lawler or his title comparable to Flair and his world championship. And he finished the tirade by saying, Jerry Lawler is a disgrace to professional wrestling. What do you think that's about here? I mean, this is not something where these guys have ever worked together, like on this stage. I know that Flair did some shots in Memphis with Lawler, but it's not like this is going to be paid off in an NWA ring. Do you think Rick was taking it personal? Some of the stuff Lawler had said in Memphis on TV? Absolutely.
He wasn't set up for an angle or for another match. He was offended that Jerry would make some of his, Lawler's promos, from a promo standpoint, quality standpoint, I should say, it's hard to beat. And Lawler, just as a heel or babyface, and especially in Memphis, he was incredible. Not that he wasn't incredible in other places, but Memphis was that's where the throne was for the king, Memphis, Tennessee. So I think sometimes Jerry, because he had the autonomy, he didn't have a what do you call it? He didn't have nobody was venting him, or what do you call it? When he wasn't being filtered, I should say, filtered. No filter for the king in Memphis. And so sometimes when none of us have filters, that we kind of go into business for ourselves, and it's not always the right decision. I've done that myself on this show. So, but I think it was personal, and Rick took it personally, because quite honestly, if you really want to get down to brass tacks, those two guys are about as highly skilled as anybody I've been around in pro wrestling. And they have so much in common away from the ring, quite frankly, partying, enjoying the ladies, things of that nature. Even though Lawler doesn't drink, as his famous saying would be, lips that touch alcohol will never touch mine. That was the king. So I don't know. I just think it's personal. And because we weren't going anywhere with it, not that might have been the best match of the night, Lawler versus Flair, if it had ever come about, but it didn't come about on the national stage, but it came about several times in Memphis, and I'm sure that some of those promos leading into it were offensive to Nate.
Let's keep moving here and talk about some behind the scenes. We got two more notes before we get to the actual show, Halloween Havoc. One is about the status of Eddie Gilbert, Missy Hyatt, and Paulie Dangerously. Meltzer would write that Gilbert and Missy are under contract through February, and since they're 6-figure deals, they're not going to walk out on them, even though Missy's last NWA appearance has already aired, and she won't be around at all. And at this point, Eddie's going to be used to put over the top guys on TV and work prelims at house shows. Dangerously, who was also under contract, apparently worked out a release with Jim Herd, but the WWF said they wouldn't make him an offer until they saw the NWA contract release, because they were nervous about there being some sort of litigation. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I just find this interesting, because I think all of these folks probably assume they're going to land in the WWF, and that doesn't wind up happening for any of them. What do you remember being sort of the rap on the status of this trio amongst the office and your brethren?
Well, I think that it seems to me, my best recollection, the first time I ever spoke to Vince McMahon, I was working for Cowboy in Mid-South, and he wanted to hire Missy. He meaning Vince, and Cowboy had still not come around that beautiful women belonged in a locker room on a regular basis, and thought her worth was short-lived, but ironically she was one of the most marketable people we had on the roster as far as appeal, and not sex appeal. Yes, I get it. She's a very beautiful woman, but I talked to, a phone call came in. I said, George Jan, our receptionist there in Bixby, says, Vince McMahon on the phone for you. And he said, give it to Jim. And I said, what do you mean tell her? Tell him. Whatever you want. Well, I got nothing for her here. So I said, well, then why don't we just let her go? She'd have another job. She's going to be out of work. We're not, doing anything, unscrupulous. And if he makes her a big star, people are going to remember where she came from. Well, you handle it. So, okay. So I go upstairs to my office and talk to Vince, and we had a nice little, chitty chat, obligatory banter. And then he said, I'd like to talk to you about obtaining the services of Missy Hyatt. And I said, well, we could probably make that happen. And so we worked out our deal, and I don't think there's any financial restitution or nothing like that. Just outdates, timing, TV appearances and things like that. He wanted to bring her in early so that they could shoot some vignettes. And I remember he was talking to me about putting her in there's some brand, Conrad, there's a dress, leather, there's a hot leather brand that made in California. I can't think of the name of it to save my soul. But Vince made Missy some of that leather, real slick leather, tight-fitting, cleavage showing dresses and things like that. She was going to have a Missy's Manor type thing or whatever. I don't know what happened to that deal. It farted in church and went on by the way. So that was how that worked. Bill just had run out of things he thought to do with Missy. So instead of adding other women that are also beautiful, and trying to keep that male demo a little bit happier on that era, he just threw his hands up. So then we had beautiful women there, and I'll tell you, some of the most emotional things we did then was Dark Journey and Missy Hyatt. For whatever reason, it got over, much like how the women have resonated in WWE to their audience, and how we are working to make the same thing happen in AEW. It's a big work in progress for us because we've had 4 shows. WWE has done a really nice job of cultivating that, and it's just a damn shame it's been 20 years too late. It should have been happening 20 years ago, is what I'm saying. It's not too late. But so that was the deal, man. Eddie and Bill, Eddie got caught Eddie went to New York as a favor to Vince Sr. from the Memphis territory, maybe Eddie's dad, I'm not sure, and was the pretty young baby face, handsome young kid. But now he's gotten a little older, and he had not got any bigger. And I think the size thing bit him in the ass, unfortunately, because Eddie Gilbert had a brilliant mind. He was a very underrated worker, no doubt about it. But he was never going to be 6'2" or 3. He was going to be 5'10" or whatever. And I think Cowboy saw that that's not his cup of tea right now.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.